another episode of the Beyond the Device podcast, where we explore the life-defining moments that shape careers within the medical device industry. We are particularly interested in understanding how someone's personal experiences, challenges, pivotal events influence professional journeys. And as we progress through the conversation, we will eventually land on the question, what is the one defining moment or experience that changed everything and set you on the path that you're onto today? Today's guest is a senior regulatory affairs leader with deep experience across IVDs and medical devices. So she's worked across the full product life cycle from early R&D through to clinical investigations and compliance under CE, UKCA, MDR and IVDR, and has operated with COO level responsibilities in fast-growing health tech businesses. But as always, this podcast isn't about job titles or CVs, it's about the person behind the opportunity and the responsibility, the pressure, the decisions, and what shapes how someone really shows up. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Kiran to the podcast. Welcome.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having me
Hello.
today.
Welcome. That was a good intro, no? There was a lot of acronyms in that. Well done.
There's a lot, yeah.
Was that?
There was. I was tripping up. So, Kiran, as always with this podcast, we go back to the very start. So please just tell us a bit about your early years and what shaped you growing up.
Yeah, no, of course. So from right at the beginning, I've always had an interest in science, but I didn't have very much of an academic kind of family. I didn't come from like a science family or anything like that, anyone that was in science or anything. So for me, it was going into my own interests and trying to understand, what I want to do. And honestly, didn't have an interest, wasn't sure what was going on. I was like, oh, which way should I go? At one point, I was like, I'm going to be a barrister. Oh, I'm going to be this.
I've done that.
A surgeon,
I've gone down
right?
that route.
Yeah, and so it was just about trying to understand where my skill set was. What's my next step into university from school, and what do I actually enjoy as well? So for me, it was like I said, so like with my mum and dad, they were very much, my dad was a bus driver, my mum was a factory worker. So again, I didn't really have that kind of science influence, but just in general, I was just always excited about science in any way. I also enjoyed maths and psychology. I love the way the brain works, and I just think it's fascinating because there's just endless kind of theories of how the brain works and what do your dreams mean, all of that, right? So, and then I started going into my A levels, and I was like, okay, biology, maths and psychology, let's explore those areas. And then you get that point where you're like, okay, I need to go into university, so which course am I going to take? How am I going to, what does that mean for me moving forward? And to be honest, at that age, I don't think anyone really knows what they want to do, really. You have an idea, but you just don't know. And I started going through like the catalogue, like what you do for your courses and stuff, and I started thinking, oh, actually, biomedical science sounds really interesting and something I could actually really get into, like the lab work and science side, very hands-on kind of area. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll look into that and I'll apply for biomedical science. So that's what I did, and then I just went into university and studied biomedical science for 3 years. So that was very much like how I kind of transitioned from school to the uni part. And I didn't really, for my parents, they were like, just go to university. They weren't really like concerned about which course I was taking or kind of had a path for me.
It doesn't really matter, does it?
No.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say that. I think with university, and perhaps it's gone too far that way, but I studied architecture. Nathan originally started law and then came out.
I was there 9 days.
Yeah.
9 days, yeah.
But then went and did, was it like
sports science?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So neither of us ended up doing what we studied, but it was almost the step of going to university was the rite of passage, and moving away from home and growing up. It was probably one of the best decisions I made going to university, even though I do nothing to do with what I studied. And that's probably the same for a lot of people. You think early career advice or career officers when you're at school, like how much experience do they really have? Because I think when you grow up, you just know like the main jobs, doctor, lawyer, dentist, I don't know. quality assurance and regulatory affairs is on no one's radar
No.
at that point. And I'm sure going through your studies, you never knew that that was going to be the end point, and we'll talk about how you got there.
Yeah.
But a lot of guests, there's some that we've spoken to that have had like the traditional exposure to engineering or science, playing in a garage, taking things apart, seeing how things work. And then there's some that have been less traditional. So I think about Mega, and for her exposure to DNA and science was watching Jurassic Park.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
Right.
it was just, okay, what is this scientific route? And that kind of opened her mind up. So at an earlier age, without the influence of parents, maybe it was a teacher, like what was that early interest in science?
I think for me it was it was just mainly like the biology part, right? So I really enjoyed biology. I enjoyed how the body works and everything, inside the body, things that you can't see, and just how that all functions in order so you can carry on with your day-to-day life, right? And for me that was my interest, and then the brain was another part. So that's where the psychology part came in, and it was just more about how the body works, why do we get ill, what medicines work, what don't work, and what kind of side effects. It's weird because so I was growing up with my grandma lived with me, and just thinking about it in that way is just that, yeah, actually she'd always have her medicines, right? And then I would look through her medicines and go, right, I need to read for every single detail. I will need to understand what this means for her, how this actual drug's going to work, and how that's going to make her feel better in herself, right? And how that's going to treat any conditions that she's got. So and then understanding the side effects, because I had to kind of translate that a little bit as well for her because she didn't speak English. So trying to put the two together is just like, yeah, I would say that's where I was really interested of, like, from a biology point of view and science point of view, was that kind of exposure to my elderly being on medication, and then trying to understand it so I can let her know what's going on. But it was very much, what meds has she got? Let me have a read at the instructions.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So that point of qualifying with that degree, how did you then end up in quality assurance regulatory affairs?
Oh, it was a long journey. So what happened was I graduated in 2008. So that was during the recession. So luckily that year when I graduated, I was able to get a job straight away into Thermo Fisher as a lab tech. And then as I was working in lab tech, just getting to know everything. It's all very new. And the working world is very different from education and being, surrounded by people the same age as you all the time. And and you've got all different personalities and all sorts as well. So it was very much like just understanding everything from the lab side, and I really enjoyed it, actually. I really enjoyed being in the lab. When you come out of uni and you've just got your first kind of pay that comes through, and you're like, wow, I just got paid for doing that. It was brilliant.
Do you know what? On that point, I'll always remember the first time that Capu got paid an invoice under our own company, and it was the most magical thing when it dunked.
Yeah, dancing around your kitchen. Like, oh my God, we've actually created something.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just one of those things. And then what happened was, for me, I wanted to learn more. I enjoyed the labs, but it was very, very same. Very methodical, very kind of following the instructions, do what you need to do to make your product. And these were in vitro diagnostics, right, at Thermo Fisher. And some jobs came about, and it was to do with technical process development, that kind of like scientific role. And it's just something that I really wanted to do. So I started applying to like several jobs, actually, and went for all of the interviews, even though they're all internal, and then just applying for each one, and then obviously just going through those interviews for each one. Why do I want that one? Why do I want that one? And then I was able to get one of them, which was great. So I ended up becoming a technical process development scientist. So I was working with a lot of people like in more like the R&D side, very kind of problem solving, and that's when I got my overlap a little bit with quality. So that was when I was like, oh, actually, I'm really enjoying this. I'm loving this, like, problem solving, understanding why things haven't gone the way they should have done, and how do we actually look at fixing that. And, and then I started having that kind of overlap with the quality team. And then in my head, I knew then that I found it quite, I didn't know about regulatory then, but quality, I was just like, oh, this is really interesting. This is something that actually makes sense to me, and it just, and I completely get it. So I was there for about a couple of years actually, working in Thermo Fisher, and then I got married.
Congrats.
And then I moved. So I moved to the Midlands. So so I got married and moved to the Midlands where my husband is, and was kind of starting from scratch again. So it was trying to understand what jobs are out there in the Midlands. It was really difficult to find scientific kind of lab roles unless you're like travelling quite far. So I started applying. I was out of a job for about a few months, really. First of all, trying to settle in and into married life, and then it can be really challenging. And you're like, oh, didn't know you're like that. But anyway, so it was really a big experience and different for me. So I was just trying to settle into like marriage life, and then also looking for a job. And I went back into a lab tech role, the one that I did get into, and that was Harlan Laboratories. And it was different. So, with Thermo Fisher, it was in vitro diagnostics, that side of things, and then going into a lab tech role again, and then with animal research models, it was completely different, something I wasn't very used to. So, and then I moved there, and I was around there about a year and a half. But again, it was very methodical, and it was one of those things where I'm just like, oh, I need more. I need something more challenging. I need something that's going to keep my brain going. Just felt like I couldn't do the same thing again. It just wasn't me, just doing the same thing again and again. So, I was started thinking I'm going to start moving out the lab, and I'm going to find my first office role.
Oh.
So... yeah, I feel like I've like skipped a load of stuff that I wanted to say, but it doesn't matter. It's done now.
Well, I'm sure we'll come back to it. So
yes.
The key kind of question that we ask on the podcast is around key moments, turning points in your life that ultimately set you on the path that you're onto today. And at the time, you may not recognise it as being key, but when you look back, you can see that it is. So is there a standout moment for you?
Yeah, there is. It's a bit further down in my story, actually. So, so where I went into working at the binding site, so that was in Birmingham. I worked there for around about 7 years, and when I first started, it was a technical specialist role. So again, not so much a regulatory or quality, but we did have a massive overlap with the two areas, and working with them on a day-to-day as well, because you're dealing with those field safety notices, corrective actions in the field as well. So in that 7 years, we went from like a team of 4, a specialist and a manager, to a team of 16, where I became a technical services manager at that point, and we grew so quickly. I know it doesn't sound quick, but it felt like it was a really quick change.
On that, I've never known a company to hire so many regulatory people. It feels like there's hundreds.
Yeah, there is a lot in their company, isn't there? Yeah. So while I was working at the binding site, I met Patrick Drugan. So Drugan, yeah. So he's absolutely amazing. So I met him, and he started working there, and he was the head of regulatory affairs there, and I was technical services manager, and we had to work really closely because of everything that was going on. With day to day, it was changing all the time, and that's where I had like my overlap into regulatory, was really working with him and understanding from what the requirements are from there, and then trying to make sure that's translated through the company and through the departments. And the wonderful thing about working in technical services, I know it's not the traditional regulatory quality route, is that you get to see everything from the whole company perspective. You're not just kind of, quality and regulatory used to be very much siloed before. I know that's changed much recently anyway, with the culture and making sure that the culture is embedded throughout the company. But I'm very much, I've seen that in a few companies where, you know, they're very much siloed, and understanding all the links and everything. And then I was just kind of looking at it going, well, hang on a minute, how have we done this if we've not looked at that side of things? You know, we should make sure we're looking at the risk and the quality side, and, you know, are they doing that part? And I was probably sticking my nose in a bit too much, but I was just thinking, hang on, where's all the links? You know, and everyone's kind of in their own little segregated areas, and how do we bring that all together? And Patrick was very much in that kind of mindset, so that's where I met him. And in 2020, COVID happened, as we know, and I've got 2 little kids around that time. They were very tiny, so they had to stay at home. So I decided to leave my job at the binding site to look after them. And during that time, I took around about 9 months off, actually, of work. And obviously, jobs weren't, you know, really around at that point either. No one was really hiring. A lot of people were on a freeze anyway. So I used that time to really kind of be with my kids. And at that point, my daughter was only a year old. And I was dealing with mental health issues at that point. So I was kind of, in a way, like, you look like you've got depression. So I was like, have this tablet. So I was like, okay, great. Okay. And then I was going through more like building myself up, understanding myself more, being a mum to my kids, and, you know, what can I do to get myself ready for the next stage. So during that time, I decided to enroll onto a 9001 diploma with BSI. And that was just like, well, I want to understand quality more. Let me just start from right at the beginning, because 1345 is based off the 9001. There's a few overlaps, not completely, but 9001 is more for, you know, other companies. So I was thinking, okay, well, I'll just go down that route. You know, I'll enroll onto a diploma, and it takes as long as it takes, but at least I'll just be learning still, and it'll gear me up for my next kind of step. So what happened was with Patrick kind of left around the same time as me, and he got in contact with me about 6 months later, and he said to me, oh, I'm working for this startup. I think you'll be absolutely great if you came and worked for me. And I was like, okay, what's this about, you know? And it was a COVID-19. It was a company that was basically looking at rolling out PCR testing for COVID-19 and lateral flow tests as well. So I was like, okay, great. Let's see what that's about, because I was trying to find jobs, and it was very, very difficult to find anything really at that time, especially like when come from like a technical services background. It is quite niche. You know, so I decided to go down that route. So he brought me in as a quality and regulatory manager, and that's when that was like the biggest moment for me, because I felt like I had imposter syndrome to the core, and I was like, oh gosh, what is this? But you know, he saw that in me. He saw the capabilities, and he saw my skill set because I've already worked with him. He knew I was very much, you know, equipped to do that job. And it was great because it was startup, and it gave me a lot of room for learning, and a lot of room for like reading and understanding, and then obviously going with my diploma as well. So yeah, I think that was the biggest point for me, especially coming out of like the depression as well. You know, I did a lot of self-care during that time, trying to build myself back up, and then going into a completely new role was huge. Yeah.
Well, I think there's a lot to unpick there. You've got leaving a job, then going home to care for small children, which is a massive task, and then obviously not feeling good in yourself. So, like, what were the actual feelings and emotions at that point? What was going on for you?
It was a weird one, because it was like, you know, my job like was my identity as well.
Yeah.
And then not being in that job was like, who am I? Because, you know, when you come out of university and you're just constantly on the go, and then you go into work and you're trying to make something of yourself and everything, and then you got your family as well, so you're kind of torn between the two. So it was like, I'm a mum, but I'm also a technical services manager, and that is my identity, you know. And then I just kind of had to understand that wasn't everything about me. There's more to me, and trying to understand like that self-care side. And this is where I really did with being at home with my kids. I had to start finding myself. So did the whole counselling and everything, did what I needed to do to try and process a lot of things. So I was found love for gardening. So gardening was my thing, and I just started growing my first chilies during that lockdown.
It was perfect weather, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I started growing chilies, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, actually, I've never done this before. I mean, my dad has got his allotments, and I used to get involved in that, but I didn't like the creepy crawlies or the mud when I was little. And then I started growing things from seed, and just seeing that journey from a seed to obviously a full plant with fruit. Obviously not fruit, it's chilies. But you don't want to eat those as a dessert. But yeah, so it was just that chili plant just was like a bit of a, it was just like, oh, I actually really enjoy this. Yeah.
Yeah. So simple.
Yeah. And then obviously science comes into it as well when it comes to plants, right? And it's all about the right conditions, the right soil, making sure you don't overwater it, and having that balance when you're gardening. And I absolutely love gardening right now, and I'm always in the garden looking at what's growing. So that was like a nice thing from a personal point of view. Just a love that I found.
And you said you done counselling. How did you find it?
Yeah, it was on the phone because it was obviously remote. But what I've done is I've been able to become more and more self-aware as I've gone along my journey. You have depression at one point, and then you have your medication, and then I was able to come off that medication. But then there's times where I notice where actually, I need to go and have therapy again. And I think therapy is brilliant. It's absolutely great, and it does really help with that processing and understanding and that overthinking that you have, and it grounds you, right? Because I've been on and off on therapy for a bit, even after I finished my meds, and you come to that kind of conclusion that if I'm going to have to go through therapy on and off for the rest of my life, that's what it is. It's all about self-care. Other people go to the gym, and I still do that, but it's just talking
it's the same
is different.
For both of us, we do it as well.
Yeah.
I got an email from my therapist the other day because I've not seen him since before Christmas. He was like, just checking in. I've got some availability next week. I can't do that time. So I'll see you in February. And in my head, I feel like I need a little bit of life to happen before I go and see him again. Because I was seeing him every week. I'm like, it's good because you feel like you're running out of things to talk about if you're seeing them weekly. And I think, okay, I'll give it a break, and then I'll come and dump a load of stuff on you in a month or two. But I just see it as another tool now. Like you said, people go to the gym. Why not go to therapy? You don't have to wait until things feel broken to do it. But it should be a combination of lots of things.
But I've done the same as well. Sorry. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. No, go on.
Yes, I've done the same as well. Is that I've gone every week seeing my therapist, and then I've gone, hang on a minute, let me just take a step back and let me just see how I get on, right? And then just give me a month or whatever it is. I completely get that, because you do just think, is this kind of like a new self of me? It's something new that I'm finding in myself. Am I getting a little bit better at handling those day-to-day points as well? And and when it does creep up, do you find a way to process it? And then just trying to understand that your own kind of triggers as well, right?
Exactly.
So,
yeah. I think for anyone that hasn't done it, the best way to describe it is you're talking to someone that's not biased, they're not emotionally attached to the words that you say, and they are 100% listening to you. They're not jumping in to offer advice, they're just listening. Whereas you could go to your wife, your partner, they are emotionally involved, and sometimes they will get triggered by the thing that you say. So it's just nice having someone just as a sounding board. So if you're fortunate enough to use it, then it's something we would highly recommend.
That's what I was going to say there. It is. It feels like a bit of a luxury to have that one-on-one counselling therapy. It can be expensive, and that's not accessible to a lot of people. So having that support system in addition to therapy, or other outlets like exercise, like nutrition, like good sleep, family, friends, finding who you are outside of work, because I'm sure that well, a lot of people in general will tie their identity to their work, and if something happens there, it kind of strips you from that.
Yeah.
But I would also imagine, and I can see my wife going through this at the moment. We're expecting our first baby in May,
Oh,
and one of the things is, I guess, a loss of independence, or thinking that maybe she'll be lonely through that journey, and it's because you're coming away from a life that you've had, and you're just going through a big period of change. So I'm sure every woman goes through that during pregnancy and having young children.
yeah.
And if you then, you've labelled that with depression, and maybe other people feel that but don't label it. So I think you sharing your story and actually how you navigated that would be really helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I mean, like after having my second, it was one of those kind of things where I was a bit wobbly anyway after she was born, and then I kind of just ignored it, right? And you just kind of like, oh, it's fine. And, I had two then, right? So, and both under 5 years old, and then it was only when she turned around about 1 year old that I went to go and see the health visitor, and I was talking to her, and I just burst into tears, and it was a year after, right? So I was like, can't be, depression related to after having a baby, the postnatal depression, sorry, and she was like, no, it can be, and I was like, really? And then she decided to follow up with me, she was absolutely great, this health visitor. So after, she was like, right, I'm going to take your number, I'm going to come round, and we're going to have a chat. And then I was just again, oh, just crying, and I just didn't know why.
How good is crying though?
Yeah, I know. There is that kind of feeling when you first have your first therapy session, that you have that kind of like, whoa, that was a lot. But it can put people off, I can imagine, after having your first therapy, because you're just opening up all those kind of raw feelings, and then after a while it gets easier in a way, right?
Yeah.
So it was just one of those things. It's just, she was like, look, we'll get you in contact with the doctor and and take your normal steps and everything, and you don't know at that time. You're just like, okay, I'll take antidepressants, let's see how I go. And then my whole thing was like, right, I want to find a way out of these meds if I can, and do it the healthiest way possible. There was no rush, but it was more about, I need to find a way to help myself.
Yeah. I think with therapy, like sometimes I think it has a compounding effect, and you need to keep going quite regularly, because there'll be a continuation. But then I won't go for a while, and I'm just amazed at how good his memory is. He'll just pull something up that I said about 6 months ago. I go, wow, fair enough, you're earning your money. I forgot about that. But you can go into a session maybe not knowing what you're going to talk about, and then you leave and you go, wow, okay, I didn't expect that to come up. And then you've got a week or two to unpack that yourself, but you're building the tools. I actually got quite frustrated with therapy at the start, because I was just saying, well, tell me how to fix this then, like give me the tools. He's like, that's not how this works. So it is a journey, and sometimes for people it's around finding the right therapist, and that might also put people off. If you see someone it doesn't feel like it clicks, what I would say to people is, if you feel like you're going to benefit from therapy generally, then it might just be about kissing a few frogs to find the right one.
Completely.
But that period for you, if you were to give advice to someone facing their own turning point or life challenge, when you reflect on your own, what would it be?
Oh gosh, okay. Do you mean in terms of the mental health kind of challenges, or more so just
anything?
overall?
Just any lessons. If you reflect on your journey, if someone's listening to this and maybe relates to it, what lessons
I think not to be afraid. I think you can easily, at that point where you do feel quite fragile in yourself, and you're still building yourself up, is to not be afraid of change, and to make yourself uncomfortable, because obviously you do feel like that can actually just bring on the anxiety, but actually it does pay off don't stay in the comfortable just because that's what you feel is safe. Go into that uncomfortable point where you're like, well, actually, I'm just going to take that chance, and let's see, because what have you got to lose at the end of the day? At that point, I didn't have a job, and I was just like, right, I'll just take a leap, and let's see if it works. And then I know in myself that if it doesn't, I can always come out of it. You know, I don't need to stay in it. But it's just trying to have that mindset of like, just being open to opportunities is a really big one.
Yeah, amazing. I think for me and Nathan, back in late 2020 when we were talking about leaving our jobs and starting a business, it almost just boiled down to what's the worst that could happen? It doesn't work, and we just go and get another job. But think about the upside. Imagine if it does work. Embracing that change.
Like we wouldn't be sat here talking to you.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's been great, and you guys have been in contact with me for a while now, and it's just been lovely just having a chat with you whenever we can, and you know, and having a catch up. So no, it's been great. Yeah.
and just thinking about the turning point, I think there's a few in there, but it's kind of, you've got one big one there.
Yeah.
How has that shaped how you are now in your job, the decisions that you're making since that point?
Yeah, so obviously it was a very steep learning curve going into a startup where it's quite, you know, chaotic in startups, and it shaped me in a way that I knew that I liked that. I like the chaos. I like the craziness of a startup, because you're just kind of getting stuck in on everything, right? And that's what I found that you know, with corporate and then startup, that kind of like change of culture. I quite like the startup because you can just, you know, you can put your own stamp on things, and you can do them the way you feel that works. You don't have loads of like obstacles in the way, or people that you need to seek you know, or get a buy-in from them. So it was really great having that kind of your own stamp on your own work. So I really enjoyed the startup kind of part anyway. So that's when I took my next job after that, I was really excited about working for Origin, because again, it was very startup feel, and you know, and what really I enjoy it so much as well is that innovation when it comes to products. So something that's going to change people's lives for the better, and that's what I found that actually that's what makes me tick. So it's the how can I make changes, and how can that impact, obviously in a good way, the patients out there, and for people's pathways, and how do we make sure that we can, you know, streamline that, or you know, improve it, early diagnosis, all of that as well. So for me, that was that's what I really enjoy.
Yeah. And looking forward to the future, you know, where do you see yourself personally, professionally? It might be the same thing. I know we all attach our person to the job that we do. So yeah, what's in store for you?
God knows. I mean, I don't know. I'm really excited about Origin's journey. So for me, where I am now, I really want to see that to success. In terms of what I do outside of work, and from a professional point of view, I'm all about having conversations, you know, talking about different ideas, talking about areas that we can see is improving as well. So, you know, I'd like to be part of that journey, you know, changing of regulations and updating the regulations, and kind of getting involved in those kind of conversations would be ideal for me. I'm not quite there yet, you know. I've been trying to wedge myself into people's conversations wherever I can. I'm like, hello, I've got an idea. So I you know, I do like networking. I do enjoy talking to people in the field. I like to see if everyone, other people have got the same kind of ideas as me. Again, outside of what I do on a day-to-day, I've been looking into the regulations, and then I saw about, you know, women's health and that side, and then that sanitary towels and tampons, menstrual cups are not medical devices under the regulations in the UK and EU. They are in the US. So, and then my whole thing was like, why? let's go down that path, and I just went down that and started, talking to people, people that are putting standards together in order to help move that forward, for like a menstrual product ISO they're putting together.
Okay.
So again, just trying, because the regulations will take ages in order to put that kind of improvement in, and I've just been talking to loads of people and just going, have you seen this? Have you noticed this? Why are there not medical devices? Menstrual cups are inserted into the body for X amount of time. It's not transient use, and also you hear people getting infections and those adverse events, and even if you look at the more database, you can see that toxic shock syndrome is one of the biggest ones that happens with tampons. But yeah, in terms of regulations, they're not regulated under the MDR.
Well, I think what you're doing, talking to people, putting this about there, like we talk about it all the time, opportunities are connected to people, and that's essentially what you're doing there. And you've proven that with Patrick in the past, staying close to him and what that's led to. So yeah, keep doing what you're doing. I'm sure it's going to pay off. And
I'll just keep talking.
There we go.
I fully expect to see your hand go up with lots of questions at BIVDA next. I'll be counting. I'll let you know at the end how many questions you have.
Oh, I'm really shy when it comes to stuff like that.
I've been going to them for long enough where we actually interviewed Simon Richards on Monday, and that episode will go out the week of BIVDA. So by the time people will hear this, they'll have already heard that. But we said that we had a bit of imposter syndrome going to the first BIVDA conference, just 2 recruiters in our first year, had no idea what we were doing. And then it took a few to go, and I thought, right, I need to ask a question at one of these.
Right, okay.
And just a lump in your throat when you're doing it, thinking, why do people want to listen to me? But then after a while, you then just think you just got to put yourself out there and ask the questions. So let's have a challenge. Who can ask the most questions at BIVDA next month?
I mean, my whole thing is that I want to be on a panel. I want to be up there, having conversations with everyone, providing insight and everything. I'd love to do that. Whether
well, you know what?
I could.
That's the question. Ask the question.
Just ask the question.
How at BIVDA in a couple of weeks? How do I become part of the panel?
How do I become you? Yeah.
Well, yes.
and I guarantee that, because that's just like goal setting, isn't it? If you think, all right, BIVDA seminar 2027, I want to be involved, I want to speak in something, and you could make that happen by asking some questions this time, guarantee it.
Yeah, I'll have to start thinking about it. It's not long now, it's only a few weeks, isn't it? Yeah.
But I'd just like to thank you for being so open and honest about your journey. I think so many people would listen and relate to it, and also take a lot of confidence and advice if they are going through a similar journey, that you can come out the other end and you've got such a clear tool set of things that you can tap into, and it just feels like you're constantly learning and open to new things as well. So thank you very much for sharing.
That's all good.
And I would like to invite listeners to reflect on their own turning points. If you feel like you've got a story to tell, please reach out to myself or Nathan, and we will bring you more episodes of Beyond the Device very soon. But Kiran, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you,
so
Kiran.
much.
Thank
it's been
you.
Great.